Hi, my name is Kathy Tanner and I have a business called Harmony Hand Dyes. I sell some quilting products online, but the ones I'm going to demonstrate today are the dyes and dyeing chemicals that I use. I like to dye cotton for quilting in 12-step color wheels using MX Procion fiber reactive dye. Starting with 3 primary colors, you can mix all the colors and also make a matching set of light or medium intensity. In this slide, I'm holding a set of fat quarters along with the shades, pastels, and tones. A fat quarter of a yard is usually about 18 inches by 22 inches, or a fat quarter of a meter is about 19.5 by 22 inches. There's more than one color wheel used for dyeing fabric. The one we're probably most familiar with is called the Prang color wheel. It begins with red, royal, and bright yellow. These are the pure hues. If you add more water, you will get lighter colors called tints or pastels. If you add black to them, you'll get shades, and if you add a little more water to the shades, you'll get tones. Another very common color wheel is based on Herbert Ives' color theory. When using MX Procion dye, we begin with fuchsia, turquoise, and bright yellow. The slides show 3 values ranging from the strong, pure hues on the left to a medium value or intensity in the middle and very light value on the right. Notice the greens, purples, and oranges are quite different in the Ives
Another
color wheel that I use a lot is what I call the fall color wheel. It begins with red, navy, and golden yellow. Again, to make shades, just add black to the red and golden yellow. Navy is actually dark enough already and doesn't need the black. You can see the strong, medium, and light sets of fat quarters. The products that I use are MX Procion dye, soda ash, urea, and salt. I sell these items individually, but I also make up kits that have everything included to dye a set of fat quarters in either Prang, Ives, or foil color wheels. The kits are also available in shades. I also include dyer's soap in the kits. Not everyone uses urea or salt, but these are relatively cheap additions and enhance the dyeing process. Urea wicks the moisture to the fabric, and salt tries to push any other particles out of the water, pushing the dye out of the water into the fabric. Each kit includes instructions to mix 12 colors from the 3 primaries. You can also download the instructions from my website at www.harmonyhanddyes.com. The method that I'm demonstrating is called LWI, or low water immersion. The dye, urea, and salt are in my containers, and then I add hot water. The dye particles are very fine and if inhaled can irritate the lungs. Wear a NIOSH dust mask while you are measuring and mixing the dry ingredients. Once you have the dye in solution, you can remove the dust mask. Don't forget the rubber gloves. MX Procion dye is a fiber reactive dye and it needs to react with sodium carbonate or soda ash to bond to the fabric. You need to use soda ash, but not all dyers use it in the same order. When doing a color wheel, I like to pre-soak my fabric for at least 15 minutes in a solution of 1/4 to 1/2 cup of soda ash to 1 gallon of hot water. Some dyers add soda ash to the dye solution, and some add it to the fabric after they have applied the dye. There are times when I like to apply it after, but when doing a color wheel, I like to pre-soak. Once the fabric has soaked, I wring out the excess soda ash solution, shake out the fabric, and then scrunch them back up and place them in Ziploc baggies. If you want a fairly solid color on the fabric, just scrunch them loosely. If you want quite mottled fabric, scrunch them tightly. I like to have all my fat quarters ready in plastic totes. If I'm doing a strong set of 12 plus a light set of 12, I need 12 fat quarters in bags. I get my dye ready, my fabric pre-soaked and placed in baggies, and I have my measuring cups and measuring spoons all ready. I cover my workspace with plastic. These are some sample instructions for a fall set. For the first baggie, you'll need 1/2 cup of the red dye. I always stir the dye before pouring to ensure that the dye has not settled to the bottom. I like plastic measuring cups that you can see through. If you're doing a lighter set as well as the strong colors, once I have the dye measured in the measuring cup, if I want a medium intensity, I take out 1 tablespoon of the dye and place it in a second measuring cup. If I want a light intensity, I take out a quarter or half a teaspoon of the measured dye and place it in another measuring cup. You can easily do a strong, medium, and light set with one batch of dye. Fill the measuring cups to 1/2 cup with warm water. Now take a baggie with fabric and pour the 1/2 cup of dye solution over the fabric. Squish the dye through the fabric and work the color in. The more you work the fabric and dye, the more solid your color will be. For quite mottled fabric, just work it in a little, then carefully squeeze the air out of the bag and zip it up, and place it in a plastic tote. I often come back in about half an hour and turn them over and squish them again if I want the colors fairly solid. These two bags show the difference in value between the 1/2 cup of pure dye on the right and just 1/4 teaspoon of dye solution mixed with 1/2 cup of water in the bag on the left. The finished color will not be as strong once the dye is rinsed out of the fabric and it's dried, but this gives you an idea of the comparison. After you've finished with bag 1, move on to bag 2 in the instructions. For the fall set, you'll need to place 2 tablespoons of golden yellow in a measuring cup and then fill it to half with red dye. For example, if you're making a light set, take the 1/4 of a teaspoon of dye mixture out and place it in another measuring cup and fill to 1/2 cup with warm water. Continue on with all the 12 dye mixtures. You need to cure or batch the fabric at room temperature or higher for about 24 hours. Some dyes exhaust faster than others, but especially when working with turquoise, to get the most out of the bonding and dye, you should leave it for 12 hours. Then the rinsing starts. If you want the fabric right away, you have to rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse, starting with cold water and moving to hot. If you have more time and want to use less water, you can rinse the fabric a few times, then soak it for a few hours overnight. I place color groups together in buckets and add dyer's soap or regular dish soap like Palmolive or Dawn, but not the oxy types or bleach types of dish soap. I probably squirt about a tablespoon in the bucket of water. After a few hours of soaking with just a few more rinses, your water will be running clean. I do one final wash in a washing machine with about a tablespoon of dyer's soap like Synthrapol or TNA. Dry the fabric in a hot dryer for 30 minutes. Dyeing is an art, not a science. If you talk to 10 different dyers, there will probably be 10 different variations. Some dyers weigh dyes, some measure with measuring spoons. Some swear by the addition of salt, some never use salt. Some pre-soak their fabric in soda ash, and some add it with the dye, and some add it after the dye. This is my method of low water immersion dyeing, but there are also lots of other methods of dyeing fabric. Using MX Procion Dye, you can do immersion methods or application methods or thickened application methods. The internet's full of ideas. Check out my other slide video called Dyeing Methods. You're welcome to check out my website at www.harmonyhanddyes.com and click on Instructions.